Excellencies, Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, here, please. First of all, let me extend my apologies to the interpreters that I was not able to give a copy of my speech of today, so that they have to follow the words, not the written text, due to technical problems, not in the end. Let me first thank kindly for the invitation to Ljubljana and the extraordinary opportunity to speak before such a prestigious auditorium in Slovenia, a country promoting a very important initiative to create better international criminal law. It is the challenge to speak on a topic that since long is moving me, a human being specialized in criminal matters. In principle, we always come to late. First, a crime is committed. Often the police or the military successfully intervenes to stop the crime from being further committed. And at times, the police or the military successfully intervenes to stop the crime from being further committed. And after a long and winding procedure, the last word is vested to the judges of last instance. Final conviction for reaction instead of prevention. In addition, nobody in the past really followed the fundamental principle of rule, in that we are all equal before the law. Far too long it was that there were so many untouchables, high-ranking politicians, people of the military, of the media, and others. However, the picture is not that negative any longer, in particular not when it comes to the so-called international crimes in its narrow sense. In the context of today's meeting, primarily the crime of genocide and other crimes against humanity, which in my mind have to be seen together as crimes against fundamental interests of the global community. Ladies and gentlemen, please understand that I will not go into details of the situation in Syria. Why is this? Because for a judge, it is necessary, first of all, to show self-restraint, and it is key, first, to hear the facts. Da mihi factum, da votibus. Give me all the facts, and then only then I can give you the law. But I hope that you can translate from my words what I want to say also in relation to Syria. We have to acknowledge that in the last 2 years, the 2 decades, also on a transnational level since Nuremberg, for the first time ever in mankind, out of the blue, based on the shame emanating from the omission to protect, international criminal courts and tribunals have been established in the transnational fight against these crimes. When it agreed to the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, the General Assembly of the UN also adopted a resolution directing the work begin on a draft statute for such a court. This was the beginning of revisionary work. I referred to the fundamental article of Vespasian Appella towards an international crime where he, in a very visionary way, already in 1950 showed us the developments that led 50 years later to the adoption of the Rome Statute, of the first permanent international criminal court, eventually a treaty-based international criminal court, unfortunately still confronted with hostility and at least non-cooperation by many and major states. No doubt, this approach undermines the extremely difficult work of the ICC. Nevertheless, in the work of the international ad hoc tribunals and also the tribunals in Sierra Leone and in Cambodia, the underlying law became like no longer merely moot texts and conventions or the discussion of academics on what is customary international law. At the same time, the work of these criminal tribunals has triggered a fruitful synergy with the International Court of Justice, not tasked to adjudicate individual responsibility. In particular, in the application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina versus Serbia and Montenegro, judgment of 26 February 2007. In particular, the latter decision cannot be underestimated. It stated inter alia, I quote, that not only was genocide prevented because of the deterrent effects of punishment, the duty to prevent genocide had its own autonomous scope, which was both normative and compelling. And I quote, here we are, even the duty to prevent. Further, already in 1951, the ICJ issued in an advisory opinion stating that the principles of the Anti-Genocide Convention is binding upon all states, i.e., its customary international law. Today, however, I want to limit myself to the challenges of the judiciary in criminal matters. The question still remains, what can be the contribution of the judiciary in the framework of transnational accepted responsibility to prevent? To prevent, not only to destroy and sanction these crimes. Thus, it is my honest pleasure to present today some thoughts on the role of the judiciary in this mandatory responsibility to protect. The judiciary, that is not only about international courts or tribunals, but in terms of complementarity and subsidiarity, also regional, sub-regional, and domestic courts. The structure of my contribution flows from this topic. Let me give, at the same time, some examples on what is genocide in reality. What is the fact-finding and what was the fact-finding mission of international tribunals? One thing is to read and discuss the text on genocide. The other side is the reality and to hear about these heinous crimes from victims, their relatives, on a daily basis. I have to be honest and to say that it's difficult to stand this challenge as a judge, a prosecutor, a counsel, or first of all, the interpreters, to be confronted with these words about heinous crimes committed, also in part committed in this area, in the territory of former Yugoslavia. Ladies and gentlemen, what have we achieved as lawmakers and law enforcers on a global scale? Where are the gaps to be filled? Let me first turn to substantive law, genocide. The text of the Genocide Convention of December 1948 is all well known. The convention entered into force on 12 January 1951. It has to be recalled that the term genocide did not appear in the Charter of the International Military Tribunal. Instead, the term crimes against humanity was used to deal with persecution and physical extermination of national, ethnic, racial, and religious minorities. As one result of this approach, the United Nations Secretary composed the draft text, prepared with the assistance of brilliant experts, in particular Raphael Lemkin, Vespasian Peller again. The first companion was drafted and reworked by a committee set up under the authority of the Economic and Social Council. This draft was the basis of negotiations in the Sixth Committee of the General Assembly, which submitted the final text of the Convention for formal adoption to the General Assembly. Its obligation to prevent genocide dovetails nicely with the responsibility to protect, recognized in 2005 by the United Nations General Assembly and endorsed the following year as Security Council. The definition of genocide set out in its Article 2 is a much reduced version of the text prepared by the Secretariat experts, who have divided genocide into three categories: physical, biological, and cultural genocide. The Sixth Committee voted to exclude cultural genocide from the scope of the Convention, although it subsequently agreed to an exception to this rule, allowing forcible transfer of children from one group to another as a punishable act. The drafter also voted down by a very substantial margin an amendment that sought to add a sixth punishable act to Article 2. It would have enabled prosecution for imposing measures intended to oblige members of the group to abandon their homes in order to escape the threat of subsequent treatment. References to these debates have also judicial decisions that essentially exclude ethnic cleansing from the code of citizenship. The unfortunate distinction, the separation of genocide from other crimes against humanity, was born. Highly disputed in particular in relation to borderline crimes committed on the territory of former Yugoslavia beyond Srebrenica. Let me give two examples justifying, in my mind, such distinction under the law applicable at present. In relation to Prvi, it was said in the ICT White case, prosecutor versus Milomir Starkic, charged also for English genocide, I quote, "Despite the scale of the atrocities, after careful analysis of the facts and the state of mind of the actors, the trial chamber was unable to infer the necessary dolus specialis for genocide. This dolus specialis, or specific intent, to destroy in whole or in part a group as such being the core crime, the core element of the crime. The trial chamber, however, found that the crimes of persecutions and extermination committed against non-Serbs throughout the municipality constituted the core element of the criminal conduct of Dr. Starkic and meted out a life sentence, which was later on reduced by the appeal chamber to 40 years of imprisonment. It reads in the judgment, in relation to killing of members of the group, the trial chamber is not satisfied that Dr. Starkic possessed the requisite dolus specialis for the genocide, but leaves open the question whether he possessed the dolus eventualis for killings which may have been sufficient to satisfy the subjective element of other crimes charged in the indictment. While the trial chamber is satisfied that the code and goal of the members of the SDS in the municipality of Prvi, including Dr. Starkic as president of the municipal assembly, was to establish a certain municipality, there is insufficient evidence of an intention to do so by destroying in part the Muslim group. Even though Dr. Starkic helped to wage an intense propaganda campaign against Muslims. There is no evidence of the use of fateful terminology by Dr. Slakic himself, from which the dolus specialis could be inferred. Statements made by Dr. Slakic do not publicly advocate killings, and while they reveal an intention to adjust the ethnic composition of Theodore, the trial chamber is unable to infer the intention to destroy the group. The intention to displace the population is not equivalent to the intention to destroy. But you can see the close link between genocide and other crimes against humanity. Until today's date, nobody stands finally convicted before the ICTY for having committed genocide. Nevertheless, it's carved in stone that genocide was committed in Srebrenica, which was already mentioned. In the appeals chamber judgment, the case prosecutor Ladislav Kristic of 19 April 2002 already, you can read, the killing of the military-aged man was assuredly a physical distraction, and given the scope of the killings, the trial chamber could legitimately draw the inference that their extermination was motivated by genocidal intent. May I refer you, in the interest of time, to paragraphs 29 and 37 of this judgment. What is important is that at the end of the day, the appeal chamber says, and I quote, the appeal chamber states unequivocally that the law condemns in appropriate terms the deep and lasting injury inflicted and calls the massacre of Srebrenica by its proper name, genocide. The appeal chamber continues to say, with a view to general deterrence and responsibility to protect, I quote, those responsible will bear the stigma, and it will serve as a warning to those who may in future contemplate the commission of such a heinous act. End of quote. Kristic was finally convicted only for aiding and abetting genocide because it could not be proven beyond reasonable doubt that he himself has this specific genocidal intent. On the other hand, the conviction of Mr. Siromba before the ICTR, the Rwanda Tribunal, was upgraded from aiding and abetting to committing for covert reason. On March 12, 2008, the appeal chamber of the United Nations International Tribunal for Rwanda handed down its judgment in the case prosecuted by Siromba. The appeal chamber found that Athanasius Siromba, a Roman Catholic priest from Rwanda, was guilty of committing genocide and extermination as a crime against humanity for his participation in the bulldozing of Nyange Church that resulted in the deaths of at least 1,000 ethnic Tutsi inside the church on April 16, 1994, and increased the sentence from 15 years of imprisonment to the remainder of his life. It found that committing genocide does not require direct and physical perpetration, that's very important, and held that committings may occur where the actions of an accused are as much an integral part of the genocide as well as the killing which they enabled. The majority held that Mr. Romba was the principal perpetrator of the crime itself by approving and embracing as his own the decision to commit the crime and thus should be convicted for committing genocide. Therefore, Siromba was convicted for not only aiding and abetting, but for committing these actions, including his presence, utterances, approving and embracing the decision to bulldoze, and giving of directions amounted to an integral part of the genocidal bulldozing of the church. Under this expanded definition of committing the genocide for bulldozing, I quote, "It is irrelevant that Athanasius Ramba did not personally drive the bulldozer that destroyed the church." When we speak about genocide, we have also to take into account this reality. How is it possible that in our world, in the case of Starfish, a human being, the leading physician in this area, having sworn that he wants to protect life and shelter life, that he has become such a serious perpetrator? How come that a priest opened the doors of the own church, conservative counting, for about 1,500, others about 3,000 Tutsi, immediately after the beginning of the genocide in Rwanda, then closed the church and asked the bulldozer driver to destroy the own church where these people allegedly found refuge in the church. Having quoted this in detail, I not only want to show real life in a nutshell, but also want to highlight 4 topics. Is the distinction between ethnic cleansing and genocide justified? I tend to answer in the affirmative, simply because it makes a serious difference whether the intent is to destroy a group or to make the group homeless. The gap can be filled by the crime of extermination, crime against humanity. The verdict has to explicitly show and exactly show whether or not the crime of crimes, genocide, has been committed. At times, the conviction based on crimes against humanity can attract an even higher sentence. To give you only one example, as a judge on the German Federal Supreme Court, I had, as a reporter, a case before me, a German that killed former Jugoslaviyo has attempted to kill another person in former Yugoslavia. The court found that this, because of the intent, amounted to genocide. However, because it was an attempt, the acts were limited, the outcome was imprisonment of 5 years only, whereas other crimes against humanity attract, as I said, life imprisonment. Let me quote in general James Bill Shabazz. Genocide is a crime of intentional destruction of a national, ethnic, racial, and religious group, whole or in part. The definitional provision has stood the test of time, resisting calls for its expansion. The obstinate refusal to modify its definition is not explained by some conservatism in international law and practice. Rather, the gaps left by the somewhat narrow definition of genocide in the 1948 Convention have been filled more or less satisfactorily by the dramatic enlargement of the ambit of the crimes against humanity during the 1990s. The coverage of crimes against humanity expanded to include acts perpetrated in time of peace and to a broad range of groups, not to mention an even growing list of punishable acts inspired by developments in international human rights. Thus, the Genocide Convention remains confined to the intentional physical destruction of the group rather than attacks on its existence involving persecution of its culture, result. I personally hesitant whether it would be at present in these particular circumstances of our present world political situation to extend the enumeration of targeted groups, also because we don't actually know whether such an attempt to modify the convention as such would not, at the end of the day, could not be even counterproductive. I think we have to focus more on other elements of the crime of genocide. Maybe an appropriate way is to have an additional protocol, but we should be extremely happy that we have this wonderful convention of 1948. Of course, with all that, we indeed have to call the flaw, but at least we have something anyway. The second question would be, is the threshold for the mens rea of genocide too high? In my humble opinion, yes. And it can be clarified by proper interpretation. There's no reason to depart from the principle of direct intent. Dolus actualis, however, cannot suffice. Maybe, and I hope this shows that on further discussion of the problems you have before you, you can change your mind. Maybe that's the reason why the decision in the aforementioned Prvi case, Mr. Starkic, could have resulted in a total different outcome. Therefore, I think this is one key to the development of the proper interpretation of the anti-genocide convention. The third and most serious point is, how can the judiciary's responsibility to protect become more deterrent as it is already today? To quote again, the case Starkic, the Tribunal recalls that the International Crime Bureau was set up to counteract impunity and to ensure fair trials for the alleged perpetrators of crimes falling within its jurisdiction. The tribunal was established under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter on the basis of the understanding that the search for the truth is an inalienable prerequisite for peace. The tribunal is mandated to determine the appropriate penalty, often in respect of persons who would never have been expected to stand trial. While one goal of sentencing is the implementation of the principle of equality before the law, another is to prevent persons who find themselves in similar situations in the future from committing crimes. Therefore, general deterrence is substantially relevant to the case before this tribunal. In the context of combating international crimes, deterrence refers to the attempt to integrate or to reintegrate those persons who believe themselves to be beyond the reach of international law. Such persons must be warned that they have to respect the fundamental global norms of substantial criminal law, or face not only prosecution but also sanctions imposed by international tribunals. In modern criminal law, this approach to general deterrence is more accurately described as deterrence aiming at reintegrating potential perpetrators into the global society. What we need is an even more factual law enforcement in the spirit of further equality before. nobody, and really nobody, shall be in the future exempt from personal accountability, responsibility. Only then international jurisdiction will achieve full credibility. Fourth, what about the modes of liability? At ICTI and ICTR, there was, in my humble opinion, unnecessary and unfruitful dispute on what establishes committing. Is it now perpetration, co-perpetration, or is it joint criminal enterprise? I don't know. It would have been better to focus in the very beginning to the question, when begins punishability, in order to prevent the crime, or at least to the further commission of an ongoing crime. Article 3 lists the modes of liability of the crimes of genocide in action to perpetration as such. The following acts shall be punishable: genocide, conspiracy to commit genocide, direct and public incitement to commit genocide, attempt to commit genocide, complicity in genocide. A very modern, general part of law. Opposed to the traditional reacting criminal law, three categories: direct and public incitement to commit genocide, attempt, complicity, are incomplete, inchoate offenses, meaning that in fact preliminary acts committed even where genocide itself does not take place are punishable. Most importantly, no result, no link between direct and public incitement to genocide and the commission of genocide has to be shown or proved. Unfortunately, the jurisprudence, in particular of ICTR, hasn't been that clear on this point, but I think at today's date it's settled in the jurisprudence that indeed no link, no result has to be shown. The direct and public incitement to commit genocide as such is punishable, and it calls for an intervention in order to prevent. I think here is one of the keys for a better implementation of this convention in the framework of the responsibility to protect. The most controversial, the aforementioned direct and public incitement, is restricted by two objectives, so as to limit conflicts with the protection of freedom of expression. I wonder whether this conflict, or better, alleged conflict, indeed exists. The question rather is, what shall prevail? To penalize the glorification of genocide or unlimited freedom of expression? In my opinion, the latter must be. For example, Rwanda and Germany, based on their self-created tragedies, have an even wider scope of punishability, fulfilling their responsibility to prevent. In Germany, section 130 of the Criminal Code provides, inter alia, as it went long and winding paragraph, whosoever publicly or in a meeting approves of, denies or downplays an act committed under the rule of National Socialism, or the kind indicated in section 6.1 of the Code of International Criminal Law, genocide, in a manner capable of disturbing the public peace, shall be liable to imprisonment not exceeding 5 years or a fine. Whosoever publicly or in a meeting disturbs the public peace in a manner that violates the dignity of the victims by approving or glorifying or justifying National Socialist rule or arbitrary force shall imprisonment. Similar and even further going prison provisions are to be found in the most updated criminal code of Rwanda in an attempt to prevent the repetition of what happened in 1994. Article 116 reads, any person who publicly shows by his or her words, writings, images, or by any other means that he/she negates the genocide against the Tutsi, brutally minimizes it, or attempts to justify or approve its grounds, or any person who hides or destroys its evidence shall be liable to a term of imprisonment of more than 5 years. And as regards the punishable acts of genocide, it reads in Article 103, other acts punished as crimes of genocide or crimes against humanity. It reads, it's punishable, one, in order, even when not followed by the Commission, to commit any of the crimes provided under this law, a proposal or an offer to commit such a crime, and the acceptance of such a proposal or offer, incitement, either by speech, image, or writing, to commit such a crime, even when not followed by the Commission, conspiracy to commit a crime, even when not followed by the Commission, abetment to commit a crime, even when not followed by the Commission, the fact of knowing the existence of conspiracy to commit such an offense, and the attempt to commit such a crime. A broad range of additional acts calling for the intervention of the judiciary. Why these details? Because they do allow domestic and transnational courts to intervene by means of criminal law at an early point in time. The interpretation of the crime of incitement to genocide as foreseen in the 1948 Convention not only allows but calls for such an early intervention. In my opinion, it was not only a mistake not to militarily intervene in Rwanda. Lieutenant General Romeo Dallaire and others cried for help in the eve of the undoubtedly upcoming genocide. Wouldn't it a lesson to be learned to immediately bring to trial those directly and publicly inciting to genocide? Why wait until 800,000, conservative counting, 800,000 human beings have been slaughtered? It is a question of enforcement of existing law. This is a question of willingness on the part of the community of nations. It is about the willingness to have a permanent intervention squad of highly experienced and well-trained judges, always ready when the international community so wants. Further, wasn't it superfluous to overload indictments of ICTR by trying to difficultly prove also the additional commission of genocide by own hand, when it was easy to prove direct and public incitement to genocide, a crime in appropriate cases, also calling for the highest possible sanction? Finally, unlike most of the other main human rights treaties, the Genocide Convention does not establish a monitoring mechanism. There have been periodic calls to set up a treaty body, possibly by an additional protocol to the convention, or perhaps simply by resolution of General Assembly. In 2004, the Secretary General of the United Nations established the high-level position of Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide. But I think this does not suffice. For us, it's not only to ask, why are only 140 states parties to the convention? What about the 41 signatories and other states totally ignoring this convention? How many states have implemented genocide in its own criminal law? It should not be forgotten in this context that ICTR could not refer a case to a member state of the European Union because there was no international crime of genocide. Homicide and murder, of course, cannot be equal. How many similarities will we find in other state parties? So there should be a permanent observation of implementation. We need a comparative overview on how the convention was implemented in order to find the best solution, serving as an example for other states and transnational tribunals. I think it's not only for the global level. In terms of subsidiarity and complementarity, we also have to think that not everything can and should be done on a global level. In my opinion, the rule should be what can be done against these crimes on the domestic level should be done on the domestic level. What can be done on a regional level or sub-regional level should be done on this level. But surprisingly enough, there is a gap. We have domestic courts, we have global courts. What about European Court, European Criminal Court, dealing with these acts? What about African courts dealing with these acts? In my very personal opinion, I think it was not the best solution to send me to Africa, because it's also about culture. Criminal law is always about culture. And actually, I don't know that much about the cultural background, the body language, the way how to express. And I think it was very, very well done to establish the ICTR. But in future, I wonder whether it will be wise that nearly African cases could be heard in Africa and European cases could be heard on a European level. And only when it does not suffice and the courts on the domestic, regional or sub-regional level are not willing and able, only then the prosecution of the hearing should be held on the level of the global tribunal. We need, in this context, as I said beforehand, also competent judges able to intervene immediately. And I think the word immediately is one of the key words in this question of responsibility to protect before it is too late. We can be very proud that the world leaders most recently in September 2012 adopted a declaration reaffirming the rule of law as a foundation for building a real global world where the rule of law dictates. At paragraph 22 it reads, "We commit to ensuring that impunity is not tolerated for genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity, or for violations of international humanitarian law, and gross violations of human rights law, and that such violations are properly investigated and appropriately sanctioned, including by bringing the perpetrators of any crimes to justice through domestic mechanisms or, where appropriate, regional or international mechanisms in accordance with international law, and for this purpose, we encourage states to strengthen national judicial systems and institutions. But here already it transpires this idea: domestic, regional, global.